Hello everyone, I welcome you all to this live webinar today. Uh, uh, Today this webinar would be focusing on Kerala. Kerala in the beginning of the corona crisis that hit India, it was Kerala that was showing the maximum number of corona positive cases. It turned out to be a hotbed, but now through its exemplary initiatives and strategic efforts, Kerala has uh, drastically could bring down the sharp spike in the corona positive cases. And its capital city, Thiruvananthapuram, is leading in its own smart and unique way. And my name is Sudhir Gautam. I'm the Senior Assistant Editor and Bureau Head with the Ellets Technomedia. Ellets Technomedia is a B2B research-based media organization that brings out 4 sector-focused publications, including eGov magazine that focuses on innovation and technology and smart cities and also various other sectors, and DL magazine that focuses on innovation and best practices in education, eHealth magazine that focuses on healthcare system, and BFSI Post that focuses on banking and finance. Ellets Technomedia closely works with the government at various levels, including district, city, state, national, and international level. And Ellets Technomedia could also work with the governments in Europe, with the United Kingdom in Cambridge Town, in Denver, in United States, and also Middle East with the Bahrain and Dubai government, and also in various other Asian countries. Today, I am glad and happy to introduce and bring to you a young and dynamic IAS officer of our country, who is a 2008 batch IAS officer, basically from Hyderabad. He is a IITian from Madras IIT. He's a computer and IT engineer. He is prior to joining the Indian Administrative Services, he was also the missile scientist with Defense Research Development Organization. Then he goes on to become an IPS officer with the Punjab cadre, and then joins Kerala with the government of Kerala. And now he currently serves the department and also the CEO for Thiruvananthapuram Smart City, and he's also the project director for Kerala Urban Service Project Limited, which is a World Bank aided project. And I'm happy to introduce him, who has been awarded at the national level by the President of India, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, back then, for his excellent work in the district. In 2016, he was also awarded the best collector of the state by the Kerala government. And when the Kerala was hit drastically by the floods, he was the man and the transforming force for taking the tourism to next level and bringing back tourism and to get it kicking with a lot of excellent initiatives. He is also the man, the brain behind the Boats League Championship in Kerala, which become very popular and popular for its snake boat championship. So please join me in welcoming Mr. P. Balakiran, who is the CEO for Thiruvananthapuram Smart City Limited, Director for Kerala Tourism, and also the Project Director for Kerala Urban Service Delivery Project. Welcome, sir, to this live webinar.
Namaskaram.
Sir, before we go, thank you, sir. Before we go into the technicalities of the various initiatives, we would, for the interest of audience, we would like to know your studies, your career that touched upon various aspects from being a missile scientist to an IS officer. Can you please brief us about that?
Yeah, you asked me to sum up the last 40 years of my life. But anyway, so I've been a Hyderabadi for a long time. My schooling was in Hyderabad in Dilshuk Nagar, if I may say so. I'm a student of Shantiniketan High School in Dilshuk Nagar. So I did my schooling till 10th there, and
Wonderful.
after that I've been a bright student all along in my schooling days, and I've in fact got state 18th rank in the 10th standard. After that, in intermediate or plus two, also I have taken my maths optional, maths, physics, chemistry optional. And during that time, in the intermediate also, I've got state seventh rank in the intermediate. So so always have been interested in studies. And during the intermediate, I have also started preparing for the IIT JEE exam. And immediately after my inter in 1998, I have written the IIT JEE, and I've got into IIT Madras as a computer science graduate. And it's been a wonderful journey in IIT throughout the 5 years. I've done a 5-year dual degree course, so BTech and MTech in 5 years in IIT Chennai, and I have got beautiful memories of IIT days, as we call it. And those days have actually transformed me into a high objective, high goal seeking person, which I would like to call myself as. That's when I during the days of IIT only I realized by the end of my engineering I thought I should go into government service rather than the traditional MS PhD which IITians do, or MBA which they do from IIMs. So I immediately applied for the DRDO scientist job, and I have been selected as a computer scientist in DRDO. It's named as scientist B in DRDO. So I've worked in DRDL for DRDL is the missile lab in Hyderabad, where I have worked for 4 years in a project which makes BrahMos cruise missiles. So it was again a wonderful experience. I can never forget the experience which I had in DRDO. And I think it's whatever you do, you cannot get back those days of working on a cruise missile and actually seeing a cruise missile test flight. But then I wanted to write civil service as well. In the first attempt, I got into IPS, where I have did my IPS training in National Police Academy in Hyderabad. After 1 year, during the course of the training, I have written the exam again, and I've got into IAS. And here I am in Kerala, right from Punjab to Kerala. I have transferred from police to Indian Administrative Service, and I'm having a thoroughly good time in Kerala from the last 12 years.
Yeah, it's wonderful journey from south to north and back to south.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Wonderful experience of IPS scientist and also IS.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, sir, you had an excellent work, and you work leadership, exemplary leadership you have exhibited in various departments, be it in the IT department as a district administrative collector, in various sector in tourism. We will touch upon those subjects at the end of this webinar. Before that, now we are tackling this corona pandemic. So I would like to ask you, how do you look at this corona crisis personally?
Oh, absolutely. It has affected personally everybody, is what we can understand. We have read about pandemics in textbooks and in through stories, but I think now 7 billion people on Earth are experiencing the pandemic firsthand. I mean, look at you and me. We are talking through this webinar through home, having the meetings on Zoom or Google Meets, talking to people only on net. We are not able to move outside. Even if we move, we come back. the restaurants we cannot go and eat. Millions of people are stranded at various places, including some of our relatives and dear ones who are not who have went to a meeting or went to a place of work, and just because one day flights and trains have got cancelled, they are stranded there, and they have been there for last 40 days. And that pain is there on every one of us, and these are of course small compared to the number of deaths. I mean, you the latest figures are actually talking about 232,000 people died on earth in this day of advancement of medical research. 232 people thousand people have died, and and just because of a flu kind of a virus. It's a COVID 19 virus is basically a flu. So it has I think brought ourselves on the ground. I think that's what I think. And when 32 lakh people are affected across the globe, and the mighty United States of America is clocking 62,000 deaths due to this COVID-19 virus. And the Europe, you look at the countries UK, France, Germany, Spain, Italy have all crossed 1.5 lakh cases, and many of them have crossed 25,000 deaths. I think it puts life in perspective, and I think it's certainly a ground-defining moment, I would say, in the history of mankind. And but I would also say that on the positive way, I think we'll come out of it better as better human beings, and maybe I think we'll have a new way of thinking once we come out of this pandemic.
Wonderful, sir, wonderful. In this time of crisis, Kerala has shown an exemplary results in terms of containing the corona pandemic, and now the sharp spike of positive cases have come down drastically. In the same way, now I should also congratulate each and every person who worked towards this. In Thiruvananthapuram, now it is out of that red zone category. Now it is with 0 cases in Thiruvananthapuram, if I'm not wrong. Can you please tell what were the initiatives you have taken and the preparedness that the administration in Thiruvananthapuram could take and come to this stage?
Uh, I think what you have said is right. In fact, on Jan 30th or Jan 29th, when the first cases of COVID virus have been found in Kerala from the 3 students who have returned from Wuhan, the entire India has taken notice, and we have swung into action. And the government of Kerala has swung into action right from day one. I think we understood that because of extremely high expatriate population and extremely high international movements of Malayalis across the world, we knew that either today or tomorrow or day after tomorrow, we are going to have a large instance of cases. Immediately, the government of Kerala, under the dynamic leadership of Honorable Chief Minister Shri Pinarayi Vijayan, has taken it heads on, has taken the case head on, and have started extremely carefully strategized steps on how to deal with it. What we realized is these cases are not going to be are not going to be one off. They are going to come again and again, and we have to be prepared well for that. It actually helped that Kerala over the last many decades have invested heavily on public health. Our public health centers are one of the best in India, I would say, and they have been taken care by various governments in maintaining very high infrastructure. Similarly, the higher echelons of the health infrastructure also were well tuned. We have got our experience also from the 2018 Nipah virus attack, where we have first heard about how do you tackle the pandemic by the seriously deadly virus when it spreads through air. It happened in Kozhikode in 2018, where the Nipah virus has happened, where the mortality was more than 90%. So if you get the virus, you're almost good as gone. At that time itself, Kerala has taken wonderful steps, especially under the honorable health minister and the health secretary and the entire health team have narrowed down the area of infection to just one district or one or two districts, and then controlled it in just 45 days. which has given us tremendous confidence on how to deal with these kind of viruses. Those are the first times where the government of Kerala has started doing something called as contact tracing. When it first came out as a news, people thought it was people didn't take it seriously, in the sense that a person who is affected, we are asking him where all he has gone in the last 4 5 days or 5 days or 10 days or whatever, and we have carefully mapped where all this person has gone. We have published those as route maps. Imagine if a person say X is affected, and say Y is affected and Z is affected. All these three persons route tracing, route mapping has been done meticulously and has been published in newspapers, published in media, published in television, saying that if you are at those places during that time, then you be careful, or you please inform us, and then we'll put you in home quarantine and try to monitor you on that. So that experience in Nipah has actually greatly helped us when we dealt with COVID-19 pandemic issue also, where the whole protocols which are developed in Nipah has been expanded in a big way, because Nipah was only a localized phenomena, but whereas COVID is a pandemic as of now. That's where those whole protocols were swung into action right from January end, or let me say February beginning itself, wherein all the people who have been coming outside from outside India or from outside Kerala have been meticulously tracked, meticulously monitored, meticulously been proactively called upon and asked them to be at home quarantine. If they are symptomatic, then you have been home quarantine. If they are symptomatic, then the medical team and the protocols to take their medical tests have been very very carefully planned. And then if their symptoms are slightly serious, then everybody has been hospitalized. And how do you bring the patient to the hospital? How do you take care of the isolation wards? Have been the standards operating procedures have been so very well prepared. I think we are reaping the benefits of all those initiatives by the health department and the entire government.
Wonderful, sir. That's quite an amazing, and many of the states are also looking up to Kerala. How could they manage to bring down such positive cases? And now we get to know it's because of the previous experience that Kerala has faced. We would like to know to what extent in handling these scenarios and cases, to what extent the information technology and emerging technologies were used.
I'm a computer engineer myself from IIT, so I always try to uh, either include IT and computer science in the work I do, or if I'm not able to do it directly, I always would want to appreciate the things which in technology is included in fighting a health pandemic like COVID-19. I would actually I would like to say the health department and the government of Kerala has come up with such beautiful techniques in maintaining quarantine. We all know all over the world, all over this country, we all know that if you are having symptoms or we are in touch with any of the COVID victim or COVID likely victim, you are in quarantine. That everybody knows that somebody has to be in quarantine and you are at home. But how do you ensure that person is at home? You all know that it's very very hard for a person to be at home and not want to venture out when the symptoms are not there. That is where I think Kerala government has used IT in a big way. They have set up a mammoth COVID call center, wherein more than 2 lakh calls are made every day to all the people under quarantine from morning, evening, and afternoon. Imagine the effort which has been taken. So for example, if Balakiran is affected, every day a call will come from the call center saying that, "Hello, Mr. Balakiran, how are you feeling now? Are you feeling any symptoms? And what are the problems you are facing?" And not just about the medical aspect, they are also talking about the psychological issues as well. Whether is there any stigma being attached to you? Don't worry. Even the medical and psychological counsel is being given over phone call. Is I think what is making the people be in quarantine without actually venturing out. I mean, it's also to the credit of the Keralites, because of our 100% literacy and because of our high social awareness. We tend to follow the directions from the government very very seriously. That also has to be given credit. How much our government tries, if the people are brazen, what can you do? So that is one thing. And secondly, one thing which government has realized is why will people want to go out? If they need three or four things very, very importantly. One, they would need their medical supplies if they are sick. Second, if they would need their groceries and provisions. And third, for their psychological reasons and other small, small important things. If three or four of these five things are being arranged at their homes proactively by the district administrations or by the government, uh, then the chances of them going out are much, much lesser. And that's where I think I should congratulate the district collectors and the entire district administrations of the 14 districts of Kerala, that they have done it proactively. They know that these are say 20,000 people under quarantine, and in Trivandrum there are about 20,000 people under home observation right now. So when that is happening, all these provisions are also being provided to them proactively by the government. So when these provisions are there, and when the psychological counseling is done by the call center, then you would know that. Then why would you want to go out and spread virus unnecessarily? I think these are some things which have been meticulously followed by the government of Kerala and the health department, all the allied departments. And I would also say that apart from this carrot, you also need the stick. So the police has been extremely strict and vigilant on moving on the movement of people, and how and they have done an excellent work as well on that front, where unnecessary movements have been severely curbed, especially in the hotspot area. I think these are some of the best practices which Kerala has followed. As I would say that, as Honorable Chief Minister has said, that this is not a miracle. It's a hard fought battle which is resulting in these number of cases. Just look at the numbers. Till yesterday we got 497 cases, out of which 383 people have already recovered and gone home, which is
Yes.
77% recovery. And the deaths is three total three, which is what, less than 0.6%. 0.6% deaths in 497 cases. I think we are right on top of the world in terms of curbing mortality of COVID pandemic. But then we are not relaxing on our laurels. The entire government machinery is very, very vigilant. In fact, Honorable Chief Minister, every day at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, he does a press conference and
Yeah.
reiterates this fact that it's not the time to relax, and we have to keep fighting till the pandemic is controlled.
Yeah, you absolutely said, rightly said, sir. The chief minister have been very proactive on a daily basis. He is holding the press meets and giving the updates, and also encouraging the citizens to be alert and follow the rules. So, sir, coming to Thiruvananthapuram in specific, uh, what do you think the role of smart city, the idea of smart city, to what extent it came to its significance to combat this crisis?
Yes. So as I said, I have listed out the objectives and the strategy of the health department, and on how to deal with pandemic. But we have also benefited from the extremely high decentralization which we have done from 1996, from the People's Plan era. From the last 24 years, the decentralization has been so strong that the panchayat, the municipalities, and the municipal corporations are extremely strong in Kerala. You would imagine that a panchayat in Kerala has a fund of more than 2 to 3 crores at its disposal, apart from the NREGS fund of around 2 crores. So that would actually make them self-sufficient in itself. They have their own ministries, which we call standing committees: health standing committee, public works standing committee, education standing committee, and so on. So all the local governments are actually governments in itself. The same strategy is also used in Trivandrum. Trivandrum is a 100 ward municipal corporation, uh, chaired by the Honorable Mayor. And Honorable Mayor has been extremely proactive in not just following the guidelines strictly of the health department and the government of Kerala, but also doing local innovations within the corporation in dealing with this pandemic. Uh, because it's a capital city, and most of the uh, directorate, secretariat, and all the core decision makers are in Trivandrum. Making Trivandrum out of the red zone has been the priority of Trivandrum Corporation. I think we should appreciate that there are only 2 active cases right now, and total only 17 cases have been listed till now. And I think when the population is more than 9 lakhs, I think it's to the credit that the total incidence has been limited to 17. So what has happened from the corporation side, Trivandrum Municipal Corporation side, is that uh, on February 12th itself, Trivandrum has come up with a detailed action plan on how to deal with COVID-19. It is true that the health related issues are being taken care by the health department, but the corporation also has an important role in the sense that the entire waste management, entire food chain, entire migration workers issues, entire movements, and the health department started with this wonderful campaign called break the chain of pandemic. We all know that one person can contact 20%, 20% can contact for 400 people, and it's a geometric progression. When that is going to happen, the government has come up with this campaign called break the chain. So you wanted to break the chain at various places so that it is curved. So imagine in Trivandrum, there are more than 300 hand wash centers have been created on the road at various places. So
Okay,
this hand
wonderful.
wash center will have a water tank with, of course, water. It will have a sink with 3, 4 taps. It will have hand sanitizer, hand wash, and soap. And everybody on the road, near the bus stop, near the shops, near the offices, can just use this without spreading the virus. So that's why the chain is being broken. We also have corporation has also come up with building masks. So we have got 2 Kudumbashree tailoring units where 2,000 masks are being stitched every day, because we realize that the N95 mask and the higher surgical mask is for the medical team. If common people start using it, we are putting them at the higher risk. So the hand woven mask has been given much priority by the corporation, and then 1,500 liters of hand sanitizers have been prepared locally using various SAG units and jail officials and so on. And huge awareness campaign has been run within the state. And one important thing which Trivandrum has done is it has started 25 community kitchens. In fact, community kitchens is the model which Kerala government has followed, and right from day one, from 22nd March, the Honorable Mayor has started this 25 community kitchens, one per 4 wards, wherein you would imagine that free food is being given to all the needy, and they can request for food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner over mobile phone, over the call center, over mobile app, or even through counselors or contact people. And you would not believe that till today, in the last 40 days, 19 lakh 78,000 food packets have been delivered through these community kitchens free of cost, at the cost of municipal corporation. And on April 6th, I would like to say, I mean, yesterday around 27,000 packets have been distributed. On April 6th, 88,000 packets have been distributed in one day by these communications. So when food is available, when you are not able to make food, when there are many old people who are not able to cook, or when at that time the food chains were also not ready. So these are the people who have actually come to the rescue. And similarly, camps were set up for the migrant laborers. In Kerala, we call them guest workers, Athidi Thoilaligal. So we look them as guests, and in India, guests are God. So that those people also have been set up in these 3 camps, and for them also all the provisions, food, if they want to cook their own North Indian food or East Indian food, they can prepare their own food. And for the people who want cooked food, that also being done, including medicines, including disinfection, including basic sanitary provisions, have all been provided by corporation during these lines. And in fact, a comprehensive survey was done in corporation to list out how many guest workers were there. So these guest workers have come to around 9,600 people, and all these people have been provided for whoever have requested. I think that is to the credit that these people have not gone across searching for provision, searching for food, and maybe increasing the risk of pandemic growing. I mean, I can list out huge number of events. I would also want to list out one strategy which corporation has followed and Kerala has followed in general. Trivandrum has understood that if only government officials and only councillors and only public representatives are doing the work, it becomes extremely difficult to scale up because the scale is so huge. So Honorable Mayor Mr. Sri Kumar, I think I should give him excellent credit in the sense that he has combined almost 3,750 volunteers, 20 per ward. In all the wards they will be they are called emergency medical team volunteers. So any medical related issues are there, these 20 people in a ward will go across. So 2,000 of those volunteers, 1,300 health and sanitary workers were on the ground dealing with this. And you would also appreciate that there are many people under quarantine. So about 500 volunteers who are only taking care of quarantine people. So,
Yeah.
and there is a call center which is running 24 hours. 50 Green Army volunteers are there in that. So 3,700 people, 50 people gives immense uh, leeway for the corporation to deliver these services, deliver the messages, and of course curb the pandemic in this difficult time.
Wonderful, sir. It's a proactive initiative that could bring down Corona to its knees, we can say that. And we would like to know that now Thiruvananthapuram Smart City, this project is very close to the citizens of Thiruvananthapuram. So we would like to know the current status of the projects. It's wonderful that the seeing the progress so far. You are balancing both the Thiruvananthapuram being a heritage city. You are keeping that heritage tag intact at the same time, integrating the smart solutions. Can you please tell us about the current status of the projects?
Absolutely. Trivandrum Smart City is extremely close to the heart of the citizens because all the projects are actually not selected by me or the mayor or the government. It's selected by the people themselves. So what has happened is during the Smart Cities Challenge, we have done these ward committees, and each ward has come up with their uh, their objectives or their expectations from the project. All these projects have been collated and submitted to the Smart Cities mission for a during the challenge of smart cities. And on the third round of smart cities, Trivandrum has come first in that list. And then in 2000, in 2018, our actual work has started. In the last 1.5 year, we have meticulously completed the feasibility reports, situation analysis reports, detailed project reports. It's a total 1,538 crore worth projects are being implemented, of which presently 1,318 crore DPRs are already submitted, of which 1,300 crore worth DPRs have already been given administration sanctions. As we speak, 934 crore works have been tendered. Most of the tenders are going right now. Some of the projects have already been completed, which are low-hanging fruits, as we call it, like open gym work has been completed. Public health center work in Rajajnagar is complete. Anganwadi in Rajajnagar work has been completed. There are some kiosks and bus stops which are completed. So some of the small works we have completed. Some of the kiosks, some of the public toilet works we have already opened it up to the public. But the majority of the works are under tender. Especially the biggest work which Smart City is going to do is making the entire road network in the ABD area extremely smart. So in fact, the tender is live as we speak. 547 crore worth project is that. That project will make entire utilities which are overground, the KCB, Water Authority, all those will be brought underground. And we all know the problem of the roads. Once we lay a beautiful road, either the KCB or the Water Authority or the BSNL will start digging up the whole roads or the sewage network, and the road becomes dysfunctional very soon. So these smart roads would target to have a road which cannot be dug up for the next 20-25 years. So when the utilities are put on the side, on the shoulder of the road through these ducts, so when you want to do the maintenance, you just have to open the shoulder duct which is open, which is given a manhole entry, and the entire road in the center will be always be safe. And that is we are actually putting a lot of hope on that. I think the tender will be opened this month. We hope once the work starts, we can show a model on that lines as well. And compared to other use of technology, that integrated command control center is being set up, traffic and safety control command control center is being set up, I would like to speak about traffic and command control center. We are using the state of the art technology to make the Trivandrum smart, in the sense that it will be monitored not by people, it will be monitored by cameras. We are going to put up 885 different type of cameras. It will be PTZ and CCTV cameras would of course be there, because that is going to be the prime mover of decision making in the coming days. But we also going to put up cameras for the traffic management as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to put up red light violation detection cameras. We're going to put up speed level violation cameras. We are going to do adaptive traffic control system, where you know that how many vehicles are there, accordingly red green lights can be managed. We're also doing face recognition software, and we're also doing an automatic number plate recognition system, wherein any violator can be caught without fail by the command control center, and the challans can be raised digitally to his mobile app. And I think the whole police controlled traffic management, or I would say human controlled traffic management, will be going to be replaced by machine controlled, or I would say IoT controlled mechanism very very soon. I think that's going to be live this month, this year itself is what we expect. And I mean, as you rightly said, we are heavily banking on our heritage, because after all, what's a city without its heritage? If all cities look like, then what's the speciality? So
Yeah.
even the heritage structures we are conserving in its true spirit, and especially I'm heading tourism as well. So we have placed very very high premium on tourism. In Kerala, we realize that we cannot go ahead with just our strengths, which are backwaters and hills and Munnar. We also have to talk about heritage. So government of Kerala under honorable tourism minister Mr. Kadagambali Surendran has started four heritage conservation projects. One in the north, Talasheri Heritage Project; in center, in Kochi, in Muziris Heritage Project; in Alapi, Alapura Heritage Project; in Trivandrum, Travancore Heritage Project. So all the four heritage projects are going to provide extremely uh, high quality heritage tourism products for the tourists to come in. I think that's also being reflected in the Trivandrum Smart City project as well.
Okay, wonderful, sir. So you already mentioned how you are going to preserve the heritage culture intact. Can you briefly tell us how Trivandrum is going to be different from the rest of the smart cities?
No, I would not see. There are 99 smart cities, so every smart city is unique in its own way. I think one good thing about smart cities mission is it has given independence uh, to the local process of thought and local requirements. So all the smart cities are actually not doing the same thing. Everybody is doing their own innovative thing, and Trivandrum smart city is also doing similar thing. For example, if we look at there are a lot of heritage markets also in place. In Trivandrum, two of those big heritage markets are Palayam Market, or we call it Connemara Market, and there is Chala Market. So these two markets are the Palika Bazaar and Chandni Bazaar or Chandni Chowk of Delhi, or similar such beautiful markets in UK. So these markets are traditional markets, but the physical infrastructure of these markets have to be preserved, have to be conserved, included with the new waste management techniques, provide a safe and beautiful marketing experience for the safe and beautiful shopping experience for the citizens, without compromising on the heritage. So these two beautiful projects which you have started in Chalai and Palayam market are also going to be part of smart city project. It's a 120 crore worth project is under tender process in Palayam, wherein we have done a fish market with 495 beautiful counters in the fish market, which will be air conditioned, which will have a beautiful seamless waste processing system. It will have a vegetable market, it will have a separate meat market. All these three will be combined with a solid waste management process. On top of that, it will have restaurants. We're also thinking of a built-up uh, greenfield shopping experience on the top of this. This whole experience we are going to come up, and we are going to use technology for that. For rehabilitation of these existing 495 people, we are setting up a separate prefab rehabilitation complex worth around 13.5 crores. just beside Palayam Market, where all the people will be shifted. Then the whole building will be erected, and then they'll be shifted back. And then this prefab structure is going to be permanent structure as well. Though it is prefab, it's not a temporary structure. We are going to use it for the for more people, more shops to come up with, and all these will be earmarked with the multi-level car parking, which will be electromechanical puzzle pit kind of a parking facility, wherein uh, anybody who puts this car, it will be automatically set up in the 7th floor multi-level car parking system. And the delivery rate we have put as 2 minutes. So within 2 minutes, you can get your car back. So you need not go up and take your car and drive through the lane. So that is a technology which we intend to use it in smart city.
Wonderful, sir. Wonderful. It's going to be parking, traffic management is wonderful in planning. Uh, uh, when can the citizens and people? It is also a tourist destination. When can the citizens see the smart city project being completed or start experiencing the smart city aspects?
Yeah, the corporation term, the local body elections happen every 5 years. So the corporation term is going to end in October. So the honorable mayor, Mr. K. Srikumar, has given us a target of completing 22 projects before that uh, deadline, and we have completed around seven of them, and most of them are under the process of completion. And we are doing it on war footing, and we hope to complete in very very good time. And remaining big projects which I've talked about, smart cities, Palia Market, slum development, we are doing, constructing 248 uh, two-bedroom houses of 450 square feet in Rajaji Nagar colony. So all these will take at least 1.5 year more. So 2021 is what we are targeting, but we are having a lot of short-term projects which we would want to complete by October. There is a small hiccup, as you can see, that because of the pandemic, our prime season of construction, which is March, April, are unfortunately lost due to this pandemic. But we'll try to pick up once the pandemic eases, and once the restrictions ease and the construction is allowed, we'd go full blast on construction activities.
Wonderful, sir. Just one thing, the tourists who are going to come to Trivandrum, Kovalam is also nearby, like just another 20 kilometers from Trivandrum. Uh, what can they expect when they once the tourism starts? And
I think they can expect the same hospitality, the same wonderful nature, the same tourism products which Kerala has been presenting before the world tourists across. In fact, you wouldn't imagine after 2018 floods, the Kerala government under the leadership of Honorable Minister, and especially under the leadership of our Secretary Mrs. Rani George, has come up with such beautiful plans after the floods. You know what happened during the floods? It's the biggest floods in the last century, and almost it lost 450 lives have been lost, and tourism was zero at that time during the course of the floods. And you wouldn't imagine, with the 12-point strategy prepared by the Secretary Tourism, we have done a 10-month continuous campaign under various heads in 2019. And 2019, the tourism arrivals to Kerala have been, the growth has been the highest in the last 24 years. So that is to the credit of the excellent uh, marketing and promotion strategy which Kerala Tourism has done it. And we were at the extreme peak of tourism season when pandemic of COVID struck. Otherwise, I think we would have continued the flow. So coming to the pandemic aftermath, what we believe is the domestic tourism will have to be catered first, is what I can understand, because the domestic flights will be the first to start, and later I think the international travel will be allowed. Given that, even for the domestic travel to understand, because we are still in the beginning of the curve of COVID pandemic, what we are going to do is Kerala government is going to encourage heavy local travel by Keralites to various destinations within Kerala. I think that would be one strategy wherein, even if the other states will take some time to recover, within Kerala, I think we should encourage travel in a big way, wherein a person from Kovalam should go and see Alapura, or should go and see Munnar. and a person from Kannur, North Kerala, should maybe come and enjoy Kumarakam. So once this local travel would pick up, I think at least there will be some business for the tourism industry to pick up and to sharpen their strategies. Where if the domestic travel picks up, because the international travel is not there, most of these international travelers of India are going to look at avenues within the country. And Kerala being the prime tourism destination, we would like to tap onto that potential and attract as many tourists as possible from the domestic sector within India. And once the international travel starts in, I think we would want to come back to normal very very quickly.
Wonderful, sir. Once it is quite exemplary in terms of bringing back the tourism plays a very significance in terms of Kerala's economy, and it played a wonderful strategy was put in place where the economy got back to its foot once again, and it was kicking like anything. I should also ask you about the wonderful one popular snake boat leagues champion, to which you are also CEO. Can you tell us about that? How it became very popular and successful, and many of the partners could see that. How could you do that, and how is it going to be managed further?
Yeah, I think that is one strategy which we have followed last year. In fact, the Champions Boat League, where it is where the government of Kerala has imagined that the snake boats, which happened as a local sport in various backwaters within Kerala, if it is commercialized, if it is standardized, and if it is professionalized and sold as a tourism product, it has huge potential. In fact, the Honorable Finance Minister, Mr. Thomas Isaac, and Honorable Tourism Minister, Mr. Surendran, have actually developed this idea that why don't we have an IPL style boat race league, wherein it is unique to our state also, so that it is a tourism product, and it is also television friendly in the sense that imagine 120 rowers are rowing in this beautiful snake boat, and over a 1 kilometer racetrack, and it's a sight to behold. And that's what we learned in the first edition of Champions Boat League. What we have done is under the Secretary Tourism Madam, Secretary Tourism Srimati Rani George, what we have done is we have prepared a whole format of how this race is going to happen. In the sense that we have selected 9 teams. We have these 9 teams we have given them fancy names like Coast Dominators, Tropical Titans, Mighty Oars, Backwater Knights, and so on, which are more television friendly. And these 9 boats will do 3 heats as 3 lanes in a backwater, depending on the width of the backwater. And the highest and the fastest timings will be doing 3 finals. So it's all the matter of timings. And you wouldn't imagine 40 races across 1 kilometer, 1 kilometer length. The difference between the first and second has been less than 1 second. Imagine, less than 1 second. This it's a 1 kilometer. It's not a 100-meter dash. It's a 1 kilometer on a houseboat. The distance, so it is so closely fought, and we have ensured that we have got a wonderful consultant. We have selected through a tender mechanism, Social Street and E-Factor, who have brought in the corporate best practices, who have guided us on how to conduct a sports league. After all, we are a government, and we have never done this before. So, and we have bought a television broadcasting company called Grey Matter, who have done wonderful telecasting and packaging of this whole thing, and we have broadcasted it over 6 languages: Malayalam, Hindi, English, Telugu, Kannada, and Tamil. So 6 languages we have broadcast in Star Sports. A wonderful coverage we have got from Star Sports Tamil. We have got Enadu Television. We have done online live streaming on Hotstar, and you won't believe, by the end of 12 races or 12 weekends, 1.85 crore people have seen Champions Boat League in its first edition itself, which has given us tremendous confidence. I think that is one of the reasons where the off season, which we generally have in Kerala from July till October, we could turn it into a dream season where a lot of tourists have come in and to see these Champions Boat races. So it actually gelled well with our stated objective that Kerala should be a 365-day destination. Where it's a 12-month all through. So this market of this product of Champions Boat League has helped us in a big way in that.
Wonderful, sir. Wonderful. In fact, it's quite innovative. How has been the response to these boat championship league and from the?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
How has been the response? What was the response to this boat championship league from outside India?
It has been excellent. That's what I was saying. So we have got 1.85 crore people who have visited, who have seen this program on television, on HD television, on normal television channels, on their various local commentaries, on Hotstar online streaming. They've seen it on YouTube and various other social media platforms. So those many impressions we could gather in the first season itself, and everybody has appreciated that the sport is very very serious. Earlier it was more of a village level festival where a lot of informality was there, but this time we have brought in a lot of standard practices. We have brought in international auditors to audit this sport so that it becomes television friendly. Like Grant Thornton has done the audit for CBL, and and imagine the prize money which people have got. We have earmarked 5.9 crores rupees for the prize money to the 9 boat clubs. And the first boat, which has the winning team, which is called Tropical Titans, has won a total prize money of 1.31 crores in one season. I think that is unthinkable in previously. I think it is to the credit of Kerala government, which has taken up such sport as a tourism product and has put its full might behind this product, and we could make it into a grand success where there was not even one cancellation or one mishap in the last season, which was very very noteworthy. You should also imagine that this sport is not comprising of 100 people; it comprises of 3,000 people. So I was just why there was huge skepticism when we started this league. There are two reasons. One, all the great leagues like IPL, Pro Kabaddi League, or IPTL, or any other league has only 15 persons per team. So 10 teams is around 150 people, and they all happen within a closed stadium. So you have full control over everything, and most of them are
Yeah.
professionals. And imagine Champions Boat League, which is happening in 6 districts on river, which is a public property where boats are going, where steamers are going, and the number is 3,000 players. Each boat has 120 people plus support staff, and most of them are actually doing professional sport for the first time, understanding the legal agreements, and we could pull it off under the tourism department's leadership, minister and secretary. I think is a credit to the team which has done it, and of course the ground level team which has done a wonderful job in pulling this impossible task uh, of making a truly village sport into a global sport.
That's quite commendable. Now it's in the global spot. The snake boats would represent India also. And so now the God's own country is the tourism is also affected. Now, how do you see in overall? You have also been the director for Kerala IT Mission, and you have taken up several e-governance initiatives. So now the corona pandemic is going to change the daily activity completely. A lot of precautions would be taken. Uh, how do you see this e-governance, IT, and could be dealt in the uh, future activities in the state? The Kerala government has favored the partial uplift of the lockdown. So once the lockdown is out, how do you see the preparedness and also the use of IT in that?
I will give you a wonderful example on how the initiatives of e-governance have helped us in this pandemic period. You know that for the last 40 days, all the offices are almost closed or are on skeletal staff. So then, how is the work going on? So I would
Yeah.
like to state this fact that in 2013, when I was IT mission director, so we bought this e-office into the secretariat. So entire and then it was later done extremely well by my subsequent IT mission directors as well, so Safirullah and everybody. So where all the 41 departments of secretariat are now using electronic office system. So even when people are not in office, they're all clearing files, they're all preparing notes, they're all preparing letters. So e-governance actually saved the day. Imagine otherwise what would have happened. So everybody has to go to physically go to the secretariat to see the physical file and to pass it across. Imagine how much virus would be circulated with those files, and all those are gone with the e-office system, which has been implemented in 2013 and is fully implemented right now. Similar thing has happened in the district collectors also. When I was a district collector in Kannur, Kannur was the first district which has implemented e-office in entirety across the collectorate, and similarly in sub-collectorates and similarly in other offices. So, and presently in tourism, we are using again a e-filing system. So, wherein you don't need to go to office for clearing files or for the movement of letters. It can all happen work from home. It can all happen wherever you are. Even we clear files even when we are abroad also. So that would say that e-governance is actually making the ball rolling even during this pandemic times. And this is a simple example which has given, because file is the basis of the entire government functioning. And if that is not blocked by this pandemic, most of the things have actually gone very very smoothly because of that. And and there are innumerable other examples. So all the tenderings which we are being floating on in smart city also are being done on e-tendering platform, which is again, I need not be in office to upload this thousand of pages document, or my team need not be in office. The bidder need not come to uh, the office to give the bid document. He can
Yeah.
all do it from the comfort of his home. So these are all the benefits of e-tendering system. The one issue which I implemented in e-tendering at that time as IT mission director was making the payment also online. Earlier, e-tendering system only the bid was made online. Payment you still have to go to still have to give a check, or you still have to go to a bank. So we have also made a payment gateway included in the e-tendering platform at that time. And look at the benefits. So the bidder can sit at his home, read the document, and bid from his home itself. There are some issues are of course there, that you still have to go to an advocate to get some notarized and all that. But even then, so even that has a electronic form right now. So all these have become manageable because of e-governance and IT related activities.
Wonderful. That's quite wonderful. The ball is rolling despite the lockdown. Uh, you are also the project director for Kerala Urban Service Delivery Project, which is headed by the World Bank. Can you please tell us, throw light on what the project is all about?
Yeah, in 2011, World Bank has sanctioned a project of worth $200 million, which is basically doing Kerala local service delivery project. So what it meant was, most of the panchayats at that time were very very hard strung for project implementation, uh, in taking up big projects which are capital intensive. They were able to do Anganwadi schools and uh, SHGs and so on. But if they wanted to do a big investment projects, the state government and the local bodies were financially not that competent. So at that time, local self government department has actually taken up with World Bank and has taken up this project called KLGSDP, Kerala Local Government Service Delivery Project, which I was the PD from project director from 2016 till 18. So we successfully completed that project in 2018, and wherein we have completed 44,000 capital intensive projects, which comprise of roads, school buildings, hospitals, anganwadis, marketplaces, crematoriums, waste management institutions. We have put up a lot of playgrounds. All these capital intensive projects we funded through Kerala Local Service Delivery Project. So after the project we have completed with $200 million, we have come up with the second phase of that project, which we called Kerala Urban Service Delivery Project, where we felt that panchayats have benefited from this project, but urban local bodies and the issue of solid waste management and liquid waste management has not been truly addressed in that particular project. In the second phase, we have submitted a $300 million project, which has been approved by World Bank and through Department of Economic Affairs. So when I made the presentation before the DEA, so they have kindly sanctioned that second part of the project as well. In fact, we are now renaming the project into Kerala Solid Waste Management Project to give it pure focus on waste management. So the project is in the initial periods right now, and Suchitwa Mission is presently the implementation unit of that. We hope we'll be able to resolve most of the waste management projects in 87 municipalities with the aid of World Bank.
Wonderful, sir. Wonderful to know. Special focus on waste management.
Absolutely.
Sir, if you can see on the screen, you have a Q&A button.
Yeah.
See that? We can take some questions from the audience.
Yeah. So you will want to read those, or?
Yeah. Should I read it out for you?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. There is one question from Mr. Harshal Desai, Mumbai, Maharashtra.
Yeah.
He's telling, we have seen some cases where people in Kerala found to practice social distance very diligently. Is it true? And if yes, why so? How administration has been able to spread the awareness among masses effectively?
As I said that Kerala has been a socially aware state historically also. So whenever some such thing happen, not just in India or across the world, Keralite is very well aware, because each of the Keralite either goes through one or the other newspaper every day in the morning, and of course diligently follows the news channels and internet news across. So that is the ground which we had. But even then, as I said before, all the local bodies, as I said, we have very, very strong local body set up here with more than 21,000 ward members on ground. And as I said, the 100 wards are there in Trivandrum Corporation as well. So all the ward members with this message are actually taking up this awareness campaigns across the state, both to the traditional print and electronic media, but also to the modern social media as well, which we are taking up. And even the physical messaging is also helping us out. And when people see the hand wash kiosks which we have set up at a particular junction, they would know what the background of that, why it is not there before, why it is there now, what is sanitization. You would also appreciate that even in advanced states in India, we have never used sanitizers in a large scale. It was always soap, to a small extent hand wash, but sanitizers are not known. In fact, that's one reason sanitizers have gone out of stock in the first week of pandemic declaration.
Yes.
So that awareness has been created very, very diligently. And secondly, when people realize that the local body, the local government, the panchayat, the corporation, the municipalities, the departments, the collectors, honorable CM is talking to people every day at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. So people know that we are being taken care, and they know the real situation. The problem in any pandemic resolving is the rumors are flying everywhere. So if the highest authority of the state is speaking to them, dispelling all the rumors in first person, it will give a strong message across the society that things are under control. That's when this hoarding of provisions have not taken place in Kerala as much as it was. So even if you go to a market, most of the things are available because people are not hoarding.
Yeah.
People are following social distancing because the highest authority in the state is coming every day and saying that you follow this. So we would understand that. And it's not just in words, it's also in deeds. So somebody is calling every day. As I told you before, there are about 1.5 to 2 lakh calls are being made every day to the quarantined people, to the affected people, to the home isolation people, and asking them, how are you? Imagine if a third person unknown to us is calling us and asking my well-being. Look at the psychological impact, positive impact it's going to happen in this COVID period. I think all these have helped us, and people have tremendous confidence in the health department and in the health minister, the whole setup, which is actually turning the tables for us.
Wonderful, sir. I think it's giving the personal touch, asking people how are you, and a lot of sense of responsibility is coming.
I'll try to uh, tell an anecdote and how much this has been developed. So one day, the health KMCL, Medical Service Corporation MD, Ms. Navjot Kosa, she's an IS officer. She got a call from a counselor. So
Okay.
she said, "I'm a IS officer. I'm heading the health procurement. Why are you calling me?" She said, "Sir, also the leadership also needs psychological counseling. That's why we are calling you."
Yeah.
Imagine that level of care is being taken by government in not just taking care about the doctors, medical personnel, health workers, but also at the leadership level. I mean, everybody needs counseling at this time, and that has been appreciated by government is a very very positive thing, I believe.
Yes. Wonderful. I think on the same lines, there is Mr. Raja Harsha Narasingh telling reaching people through various media platforms and calling almost each and every household and inquiring the status of their quarantine. 2 lakhs call per day. He's basically appreciating the efforts of the administration. It's quite commendable. Uh,
Absolutely.
we would move on to next question. It's from Mr. Arpit Gupta from Kanpur, Uttar Pradesh. It's what role did Trivandrum Smart City play in managing COVID-19? Do you feel smart cities have emerged as the biggest support system in battling with the coronavirus across the country?
No, smart cities have actually played a excellent role in many of the municipal corporations fight against COVID pandemic, especially because the integrated command control center setup of the smart cities have actually done what is expected of management of this kind of pandemic, where all the district officials, all the department officials sitting in a place and trying to uh, do a war room kind of a setup, wherein you're trying to get the inputs from uh, various on ground activities in a centralized place, and then the decisions are also being taken accordingly. So many of the smart cities which already have an integrated command control center have done excellently well. I can take the examples of Bangalore, I believe, and Indore and all these places where already command control center is set up. They have done excellent work. Trivandrum being in still in the nascent stage of smart cities, I think the corporation has taken a much bigger lead in providing all the activities which I have listed out before, and we have always provided whatever support they have asked for.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. Next question is from Mr. Ahmad Kabir. He's talking about smart city on electric vehicles. What would be the role? What's the current status of the e-mobility and clean and green energy in Trivandrum smart cities?
In Trivandrum Smart City, apart from the capital intensive projects like multi-level car parkings, market development, slum development, cameras, and smart roads, we also felt that we should also do some excellent pilots for the state to follow. Wherein what we have done is we have taken the sustainable and environment conservation as a pilot model. What we have done is we have taken up solar energy formulation in various rooftop buildings. We have taken up rainwater harvesting projects. We also taken up mobility as a concept proof kind of a project, wherein we have taken up two sets of vehicles. One is the rickshaw, one is the auto. So we have set up. We have already tendered out 15 and given work orders for 15 e-rickshaws. In fact, they are ready for delivery right now. So these 15 e-rickshaws will be the first electronic vehicles in a large scale, which will be plying the Trivandrum roads immediately after the restrictions move away. Similarly, the e-autos we have given the orders from Kerala Automobile Limited. They are also ready for delivery. We're just waiting for the restrictions to move away. Immediately after that, the 30 electric vehicles will be moving across various roads of smart city Trivandrum, and we are also setting up electronic charging points at various places with the help of Kerala Electricity Board, wherein the concept of using electric vehicles charging on the go. So this will come up in a big way. I think we believe that these are going to be the vehicles for the future and mobility for the future.
That's wonderful, sir. Next question is from Priya Yadav from Chandigarh. She has a question: how can smart cities across the country join hands to fight the pandemic?
There is an extremely good best practices dissemination across the smart cities, which I should appreciate. Smart cities mission, Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, and our mission director, Mr. Kunal Kumar. Kunal Kumar sir actually have conducted many Zoom, VC and other video conferencing of all the smart cities, wherein the best practices of various smart cities have been disseminated across other smart cities. So we have actually learned a lot from other smart cities also. I believe other smart cities have learned a lot from our smart city as well, our city as well. So that way, there is a sense of alma mater with the smart cities, wherein a lot of best practices have been shared across the smart cities. Most of the smart city CEOs, I know them personally. Some of them are my batchmates. We talk to them at a regular basis. So this kind of dissemination is happening, and this common brotherhood is there among the smart cities, wherein
Yeah,
best practices are actually shared and reproduced.
that's wonderful. Next is from Mr. Negul DKR. Big data is the talk of the time. Often such data analytics would help during social issues like COVID. How is Smart City projects planning to deal with big data?
As I said, both are we are actually doing integrated command control center in a two-phase manner. One we are having a traffic and security command control center, and we are having integrated command control center to give more importance to the security and traffic management also. So both of these are going to use big data in a big way. As I said before, there's a lot of services are going to be provided through these two command control centers, and they are actually going to use big data in a large way. In fact, that is the main component of our tender process also, which is going to end very soon. So we hope big data and analytics and Internet of Things are going to be the way of future in Trivandrum Smart City.
Wonderful. The next question is also from Negul. I think that is answered. He's talking about project due and how much percentage of work is remaining. That is, I think, answered. Next question is from from Rajasthan, Jaipur, by Mr. Karthik Sharma. Kovalam is one of the best tourism places in India. How will you rebuild the tourism sector in the capital? You answered, but if you would like to add some points.
Yes. So what we have done is Trivandrum traditionally has been in Kerala. The tourism circuit flows like this. There are 4 international airports. So people come in either of these 4 international airports and leave by another airport. Mostly from south. They come by south and leave by north, or leave by Kochi and so on. So this is the tourism circuit which is very world famous. So what people do is they come to Kochi, go to Atrapalli, Munnar, Tekadi, Kumarkam, Alapi, Jatayu, Kovalam, and they leave by Trivandrum airport. And this is generally the circuit how it flows through. So coming to Trivandrum has a rich Travancore history. As you know, Travancore has been the princely state till independence. So it has got its own character, and it has gone its own best practices. And most of the fruits that we're reaping in Kerala are also because of the good practices which were done by Kochi and Travancore dynasty at that time, princely states at that time. So that's why the character is very unique. And given that history which we want to preserve, and Kerala has always been an entry port for cultures. As you know, Vasco da Gama has first landed in Kapad near Calicut when he wanted a sea route to India. And before a first mosque has been built anywhere, first mosque was built in Cheraman in Kochi in 628 AD. Right after it was it was born in Saudi Arabia. The first church was there in first century AD, Saint Thomas Malayatu Church. So we always had this excellent relation with outside countries, and we were always this spice route, as we call it. where we were connecting to more than 35 countries at that time itself. So given this heritage, we wanted to build heritage interlaced with the nature which we already are very strong with. We have already talked about our Ayurveda in a big way for the last 5 years, and we fondly call ourselves home of Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is the prime form of medical treatment, I think, which is now gaining very big prominence in the post pandemic era. Also, people are understanding the importance of Ayurveda and yoga. So, given this background, Trivandrum as a heritage project, we want to interlace all this. So we want to interlace the multitude of cultures which we have inherited from our rich history. We wanted to uh, prop up what are the movements which you have come up, which you have taken up in the along. It can be the social movements of Sri Narayana Guru and so on. So all those will be mixing, will be collating in a rich heritage project, and we will be presenting it in a big way in this year itself, and which will of course be a big boost to the Kovalam. Kovalam is our prime tourism destination, international tourism destination, which we are now merging with the Kovalam Craft Village, which we are going to launch very soon, wherein the crafts are being built up as a tourism product, and that will be merged with the heritage and the beach destination which Kovalam is.
Wonderful, wonderful. So it's like a one-time go. Once a person comes, it is also helping the local craftsmen. Uh, uh, can you also tell us about the responsible tourism?
Yeah, Kerala has always been a pioneer in responsible tourism. It's the responsible tourism has been talking rounds in the from 2002 from the Cape Town Declaration itself, but then it was not taken very seriously by many countries. But Kerala in 2007 has understood what responsible tourism is. Responsible tourism, in simple words, is basically the tourism which benefits the local community without hampering the environment. It's a simple two phrase concept. So what was happening in many countries is the tourism which was coming into a particular region was actually not benefiting the local people. So some big five-star person or five-star MNC setting up a hotel, the staff is from outside. They source product from some other state. They are taking up all the groundwater. They are dumping the waste in the local river or something. So there was a lot of unrest in various places. So responsible tourism has understood this problem in Kerala in 2007 itself, wherein we selected 5 destinations as responsible tourism destination, where we said that the tourism industry which is coming in this area should benefit the local people. That means you source the manpower from the local panchayat, you source the vegetables, fruits, and other handicrafts from the local area. You you take up environment friendly practices like solar energy and rainwater harvesting and so on. But for the last 10 years, there was not much growth in the sense. But when Kadagampalli Surendran sir took over as tourism minister, he said that I think it's enough of this pilot strategy. Let us roll it out the entire state. Under his leadership, what we have done is we have created a mission called Responsible Tourism Mission, whose whole responsibility is that from North Kerala till South Kerala, Kasargod till Trivandrum, we'll be creating something called a responsible tourism unit. It is similar, analogous to the self-help group of Kudumbashri or of any other, or Dwakra or something. So this responsible tourism unit will be a self-sufficient unit which will provide these services to the hotel industry, to the tourism industry on demand. We have created an online platform for this, and you wouldn't believe from the last 2007 to 2017 there were only 197 units. Under Honorable Minister, Honorable Secretary's leadership, we could complete 17,000 units, giving direct and indirect employment to more than 1 lakh people. They are providing services worth 23 crore rupees in last 1 year alone to the tourism industry. So the benefits of the tourism, when it goes to the local people, we'll always be welcoming the tourists. So we know that when tourists is coming, it is benefiting the entire person. So there's a lot of positive goodwill towards tourism industry, and that's where I think we are benefiting in a big way. And responsible tourism, I think we have got numerous awards for that from World Travel Mart, London, UNWTO. Everybody has said that Kerala is the world leader in responsible tourism.
That's quite wonderful, sir. And I think very recently the cuisines of Kerala have also been got some recognition worldwide. Can you please tell us about that?
Absolutely. So we, as I said, the responsive tourism talks about local community partnership. So what we have done is we have also carefully catalogued ethnic cuisine of Kerala. We have done the catalog. We have come up with 4 to 5 microsites recently. One is talking about Ayurveda, yoga, ethnic cuisine, and responsible tourism, and uh, and other aspects also. So ethnic cuisine is what people are talking about because of this corporation or because of globalization. From Jammu and Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Gujarat to uh, Assam, people are actually eating same kind of food. If you understand, if you go to a hotel, there is a gobi Manchurian, there is a paneer butter masala, there is a dosa, there
Yes,
is
yes.
there is an idli, there is chili chicken. Why this has happened?
Quite
This
common dishes. Yeah.
They are common dishes. So at that time, it was important because people didn't want to experience and they want to have their own taste. But now people want to experience ethnic cuisine. If I want to go to Hyderabad, I want to try Paradise Chicken Biryani. If I want to go to Rajasthan, I want to try Rajasthan Thali. If I want to go to Punjab, I would want to try out Chana Bhatura. If I want to go to Bihar, I would want to try Bihar cuisine. So
Litti
these
chokha.
are Miti, yeah. And if you want to go to Bengal, I want to try Mishti Doi. So when you want to try out that, there should be avenues to do that, and there should be authentic avenues, not uniform. Even in Kerala, there are so many. There is a Malabar cuisine, there is a Kochi cuisine, there is a Travancore cuisine. So that we are now building it up in a through our responsible tourism units and through our homestays, wherein everybody, if you wants to try out ethnic cuisine, if you search on Google or on our website, you know where to go and at very very reasonable prices. I think that's what is winning the battle, I believe. In fact, our campaign itself is called Human by Nature. So we would want to show our human face, and we want to stick by nature.
That's wonderful, sir. As you talked about nature and eco-friendly initiatives, when you were the collector, I think Kannur district, you took up a project of related to mangroves barrier. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I've always been fascinated by mangroves. So you should understand, in the whole earth, there are 3 places where you have rich biodiversity. One is the Amazon forest, the equatorial forest, where you have rich biodiversity. In the oceans, you have coral reefs. Where in coral reefs, you have excellent biodiversity, which is there. The third one is intertidal waters of rivers, where mangroves come in. Wherever mangroves are there, the biodiversity is extremely, extremely important. And I need not list out the benefits of mangroves. They are a bulwark against flooding. They are bulwark against salination. They are wonderful biological biodiversity uh, reserve. So, given this scenario, we all know that mangroves are there in are in Sundarban in West Bengal, and they are there in limited places in Maharashtra and so on. But in Kerala, you won't believe that Kannur has actually 80% of mangroves, and they are all there for many years, and they are extremely, extremely beautiful. When I was Kannur collector, I realized that we should do something about it. So I just checked up with my forest department colleagues, uh, Mr. Jayaprasad and DFO Mr. Rajan. So they said that there's already a wonderful project that we can take it up. Uh, we can list out all the mangroves and we can notify them as a reserve forest. Then they will be protected forever. The problem with mangrove conservation is that suppose somebody cuts mangrove, you don't know whether it's the area which is where it is cut and filled by water is a mangrove or not. So there is no uh, legal way where you can say that this area was earlier mangrove or not, because mangrove keep on growing across the intertidal waters. So what we have done is we have done a 14-month exercise wherein all the mangrove areas within the Kannur district have been very very painstakingly surveyed and prepared as a document. You wouldn't believe 1,800-acre land have been surveyed by forest and survey and revenue teams across 30 panchayats in Kannur district. and they have been logged as a survey document. So there's a revenue record, there's a survey record, there's a forest case, there's a mahazar. Mahazar is basically the record of in the government parlance, and the boundaries are all marked up. So that becomes an authentic document when a violation has to be curbed. And this was done. And imagine doing a survey of mangroves is not a joke. The
Yeah.
problem with mangrove is one side it's a river, so you have to get it to the river. The other side it's a marshy land, so you'll sunk in right away. But I think it's an excellent credit to the survey forest team and revenue teams of Kannur. They have done a mammoth effort. I don't think it was appreciated enough at that time or taken much notice. But the product is everlasting in the sense that all the government land in out of these 1,800 acres, 540 acres, we have submitted the proposal to government, and it was notified after a due process as a mangrove reserve forest. And imagine this is the first reserve forest after independence to be notified as a reserve forest, as a mangrove reserve forest in Kerala. So, and it is for eternity. Once a area is notified as reserve forest, you cannot turn back the wheel. I think those 600 acres are preserved for eternity, and Mission Mangroves has succeeded in achieving that aim.
That's quite wonderful. So commendable, and it all needs passion to complete such projects.
Absolutely, I think mangroves. Unless you love mangroves, you cannot do this work, because it was done in a very different fashion. That it was done in a very uh, you cannot publicize this a lot because people don't like reserve forests in their neighborhood. But then you should also create awareness about the benefits of mangroves. So the community was also taken in confidence when reserve forest is coming in their area, and people have understood mangroves uh, conservation in a big way. There was one wonderful crusader of mangrove conservation in Kannur called Kallan Pukkadan. He himself has planted more than I think 1 lakh of shoots of mangroves in that area, and he has created his own forest of mangroves. He has done it as a conservationist point of view, and we have conserved it from an administrative point of view.
That's quite interesting and appreciative. We'll take one last question, sir, in the Q&A. The question is from Delhi by Shweta Sharma. Since Kerala is blessed with many spiritual structures such as Padmanabha Swami Temple and many more, is state disinfect to counter spread of coronavirus in the surroundings?
No, presently all the religious places in Kerala are actually are not open for tourists. So we are following strict social distancing in all the religious places. In fact, though it's the holy month of Ramzan, the common prayers are not happening in. I might say that that congregated prayers are not happening. Similarly, the case with Puram. Puram is the great festival of Thrissur district, the great elephant umbrella site. Site is a sight to behold, and that has been cancelled. So they have taken a back seat. I mean, we all know that, but then it is for our good, I believe. So if you want to celebrate the Ramzans and Purams in the next year, I think we have to and be alive to see all those. I think better to be safe in this year. But then we are taking up religious tourism also in a big way. We are developing Padmanabha Swami Temple. The renovation is almost complete right now. Guruvayur is going to be complete very soon under Swadesh Darshan project of Government of India. Even state government has taken up a lot of projects under pilgrim tourism circuit, which has come up in a very nice way, where we are providing pilgrim facilities also, and we realize that pilgrim tourism is inseparable to tourism industry in India.
Oh, that's quite wonderful, sir. So before we come to end of this webinar, sir, you have been part of over the years. We have worked with you. We have known each other, and you have also been part of our Telangana Innovation Summit in Hyderabad. And you also know about our publications, Ego Magazine, eHealth. And our initiative, the latest initiative on webinars and online interaction in the time of Corona crisis. So would you like to give some feedback, and what are your impressions and comments?
I think I should appreciate Elets and Ego magazine for coming up with this initiative, because you should also understand that uh, understand that I was going through the website for the last 1 month, and you have carefully logged all the best practices of all the webinars as a digital link. So if I missed live webinar also, I can always see the webinar later, and I can use it as a reference also. And the people you have brought in these webinars are from wide spectrum, and they are all the decision makers who have done who have taken who are dealing with this pandemic. From April 2nd, I believe you have started, and it's still going on so for so many
Yeah.
days. I think I appreciate sincerely Elets and Ego magazine. I think I've been interacting with you from the days of IT Mission and e-health project, which I was heading at that time, and you have always been the flag bearer of positive stories. I think there's a severe scarcity of that in these days, and you are creating those positive stories across the world. And after all, it is all sharing of best practices. If we don't share best practices and keep on criticizing each other, how will we move forward as a race? So I believe that your webinars are, I think, are very very good, very very comprehensive, and they are doing a great service in these quarantine days, I would say. I congratulate you and Mr. Ravi Gupta also. Sudhir, you're a bright young chap. You always have a positive way of looking at things, and I congratulate your entire team, Arpit and Saurabh and everybody who are putting together this initiative and talking to all these people, and doing wide dissemination. After all, it's not that I am speaking to you on a one-on-one basis. It is for the common good. So we hope
Yes.
the message uh, is widely circulated, and people understand what the best practices and learn from the mistakes which we have done, and learn from the good things which we have done, and vice versa. I think this, and uh, that's the goal of your webinars, I believe. And congratulations once again.
Thank you very much, sir, and thank you for sparing your time and giving the insights and giving the updates. Many people would wanted to actually know about the status of the projects, and sharing your rich experience in tourism, and wonderful how the plans. In fact, Kerala is showing the way. I also would like to thank all the attendees and all those for active participation. I would request everyone to share this live webinar which has gone Facebook Live, to share as much as possible, so that the best practices and solution can reach to the maximum across the country and across the globe. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.